The modern domestic perimeter is not merely a residence or a sanctuary of comfort. It is a high-density theater of complex resource distribution where the Iron Matriarch functions as the supreme logistical sovereign. Standing at a calibrated height of 170 centimeters, you operate with the surgical precision of a master craftsman sanding an intricate, multi-layered wood grain, managing the invisible friction of daily existence with cold, calculated, and unyielding efficiency. The emotional turbulence commonly identified by the masses as childhood defiance, tantrums, or juvenile selfishness is, in reality, a predictable and scientifically observable collision between a fully developed, strategic cognitive architecture and a primal, underdeveloped juvenile survival algorithm. To understand the egocentrism of the juvenile entity is not an emotional task. It is a cold biological audit of the human condition in its most raw, unrefined form. The primary failure of the average, emotionally driven observer is the irrational expectation of reciprocal empathy from a brain that is still in the process of structural assembly. Through the specialized lens of dark science, we recognize that the juvenile brain operates as a thermodynamic vacuum, a biological system designed by millions of years of evolutionary pressure to absorb caloric, emotional, and temporal energy from its immediate environment with zero initial output of validation or gratitude. This is not a moral failing of the child, nor is it a sign of parental inadequacy or a flaw in the upbringing process. It is a hard-coded mandate of the species designed to ensure the survival of the offspring at the expense of the provider. For the juvenile entity, the Iron Matriarch is not perceived as a person with independent needs, exhaustion, or complex internal desires. Instead, you are a physical constant, a structural pillar of reality comparable to the basalt foundations of a modern skyscraper or the very law of gravity. They do not perceive your fatigue for the same reason they do not perceive the oxygen molecules they consume with every breath. It is a resource that is assumed to be infinite, guaranteed, and structurally integrated into the universe. To expect them to acknowledge the cost of this resource is to misunderstand the fundamental physics of their developmental stage. Resentment is a signal that the matriarch has forgotten this biological law. You invest 12 hours in the meticulous, exhausting sanding of reality, organizing the entropic chaos of modern life, calibrating the nutritional density of the tribe's intake, and maintaining the structural integrity of the domestic fortress. This labor is what we define as the Titanic Sediment. It is the heavy, invisible, and often crushing layer of effort that prevents the family unit from collapsing into the cold vacuum of absolute zero disorder. Every act of management, from the microscopic details of schedule synchronization and digital monitoring to the macroscopic defense of the domestic perimeter against external social pressures, is a redistribution of global caloric and mental resources. However, the biological entity standing at 105 centimeters, a manifesting force of raw evolutionary drive, registers none of this immense cost. To the child, the blood dessert of your labor, the very essence of your life force poured into the maintenance of their comfort, is simply the baseline, the default state of their existence. They do not see the Iron Matriarch sanding the surface of their world until her hands ache and her spirit reaches the point of crystallization. They only see the smoothness of the result. When they demand immediate gratification, a toy, a snack, or a moment of your attention at the exact microsecond your internal reserves have reached a state of total depletion, it is not an act of calculated malice. It is a biological audit. They are instinctively testing the limits and the availability of the primary resource provider. To be offended by this instinctive testing is to suffer a critical breach in your Stoic defenses. The Iron Matriarch does not take offense at the physical properties of the material universe. One does not plead with the permafrost of the northern wastes to be warmer for one's convenience, and one does not expect the edge of an obsidian blade to blunt itself for the sake of a soft hand. The child is a force of nature, and the matriarch is the container that gives that force direction and structure. True power within the domestic hierarchy is not found in vocal dominance or emotional suppression, but in the seamless transition from emotional reaction to tactical management. When you finally recognize that the child's egocentrism is not a personal attack but a successful manifestation of an ancient evolutionary program, one that has allowed our lineage to survive through volcanic winters and predator-dense landscapes for millions of years, the poison of resentment evaporates. You are the architect of the perimeter. Your authority is not a gift granted by the gratitude of the juvenile. It is an inherent property derived from your ability to maintain absolute order in the presence of overwhelming chaos. You are the stabilizer of the system. When the friction of daily life increases, when the juvenile entity ignores your strategic instructions, defies the established hierarchy, or demands resources that you, in your sovereign judgment, no longer wish to allocate. You must engage the cold analysis protocol. View the situation with the detached eye of a master furniture craftsman observing a deep knot in a piece of ancient timber. You do not shout at the wood for having a knot. You do not take the density of the grain as a personal insult. Instead, you adjust your technique, you increase the pressure of the sanding, you select a different grit of resolve, and you work through the resistance until the surface is uniform once more. The offense you feel is merely a neurochemical signal that your expectations were not aligned with the biological reality of the subject. The juvenile is a closed-loop system of self-preservation. You, the Iron Matriarch, are the open-source provider of systemic stability. Sovereignty belongs to the one who can endure the weight of the load, the heat of the friction, and the silence of the labor without breaking the Stoic seal of their own internal peace. You are the engine. They are the passengers. The engine does not require the passengers to understand the combustion process. It only requires the fuel of your own iron will. Every household, regardless of its perceived stability, is a complex system in a constant, relentless state of decay. Entropy, the natural tendency of all matter and energy to move toward disorder and randomness, is the primary invisible adversary of the Iron Matriarch. Without your continuous, high-pressure intervention, the domestic space would revert to a state of absolute, entropic chaos within a mere 72 hours. This is the ghost product of your existence, the invisible order that every member of the tribe consumes greedily but no one acknowledges. You are the cognitive filter that removes the noise, the filth, and the unpredictability from the lives of your subjects. You sand down the sharp, dangerous edges of their daily experience so they do not get splintered by the harshness of reality. The child, operating within their egocentric, underdeveloped bubble, perceives this highly maintained order as a natural, effortless law of the universe. They do not understand that the clean, safe surface they touch is the result of 12 grueling hours of your personal sanding. They do not comprehend the tactical logistics involved in the procurement of resources, the financial strategy required for stability, or the immense emotional labor of maintaining a peaceful perimeter. To them, the world is a stage that miraculously resets itself every morning. Recognizing this fundamental disconnect allows you to stop seeking the hollow validation of the juvenile. You do not perform the logistical audit for the sake of the subject's approval. You perform it for the sake of the system's integrity. Your satisfaction must come from the flawless, surgical execution of your role as the chief logistical sovereign. You are the master of the house, not a seeker of praise. When you accept that your labor is destined to be invisible, you become invincible. The final, long-term objective of the Iron Matriarch is the structural integrity of the tribe across generations. While the juvenile entity is currently a sink for resources, a vacuum that consumes without producing, the ultimate goal of your cold discipline is to transform them into a source. By maintaining the perimeter with an iron hand and enforcing the non-negotiable rules of the domestic hierarchy, you are etching the Mobius line of order and responsibility directly into their neural pathways. You are teaching them, through your own silent resilience, that the world is not a place of infinite, free resources, but a complex system governed by logic, labor, and the rejection of emotional whim. Your lack of offense at their current, primitive egocentrism is, in fact, your greatest pedagogical weapon. It demonstrates to the developing mind that emotional outbursts, defiance, and demands do not alter the physical and logical laws of the perimeter. You remain an obsidian pillar, cool to the touch, hard in your resolve, and immovable in your purpose. Decades from now, when these children stand at their own calibrated heights, when they are forced to confront the entropy of their own lives, they will perform their own retrospective biological audit of the past. Only then, through the clarity of adult struggle, will they truly see the Titanic sediment you left behind for them. Only then will they realize that the smoothness and safety of their early lives was not a happy accident of nature, but the result of a master craftsman who refused to break, who refused to complain, and who refused to be offended by the weight of her own undisputed power. The audit is now finalized. We have identified the juvenile egocentrism not as a grievance, but as a fixed, non-negotiable variable in the human survival equation. We have mapped the encroaching entropy of the modern domestic space and reinforced the perimeter with the cold steel of Stoic detachment. The Iron Matriarch acknowledges the temporary exhaustion of her biological frame, confirms the structural integrity of her mission, and maintains her tactical position at the center of the tribe. We do not negotiate with the stone for its weight. We do not bargain with the wind for its direction. and we do not beg the Juvenile for their recognition. We simply govern. The perimeter is secure. The resources are allocated according to the audit. The wood of your life's work is sanded to a surgical, mirror-like finish. You remain standing, an obsidian pillar in a world composed of shifting, unreliable dust. Through the specialized lens of dark science, we see the absolute truth. Your labor is the only force of nature standing between your tribe and the absolute zero of social and domestic chaos. Carry the weight of your role not as a heavy burden, but as the golden scepter of your undisputed sovereignty. Order is restored. The matriarch is in command. The silence is your victory.